Welcome to a new episode of CrossTalk, 6th Plymouth District. Now you scratch your head going, a new episode. Well, it's a new episode and a new era, as joining us is the new state representative representing the 6th Plymouth District. And before the cameras went live, we're kind of chatting. As you may or may not know, the 6th Plymouth District makes up Marshfield, Pembroke, Hanson, Duxbury, and a skosh of Halifax. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin, as always, for having me.
For folks who may or may not know who you are, maybe they're apolitical.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us about the process of becoming a state representative.
Yeah, of course. I'll brush up the campaign 30-second speech here. A little out of practice already. But yeah, for those that don't know, my name's Ken Sweeney. I grew up here in the district, grew up in Hanson, got my degree at Loyola University Chicago with a Bachelor of Forensic Science. That's sort of my professional background. Started with St. Louis Metropolitan Police in the crime lab, worked there for nearly 4 years, and that really set a good foundation for kind of my public service wants and needs there. And then COVID happened, and it kind of really pushed me to come back and get more involved locally. Yeah. My family's been here a long time. Sweezey fence that operates over down the street in Whitman here has been around since 1969 on the South Shore. So my grandfather started it right after coming back from Vietnam and has been here ever since. So deep roots here, happy to be back. Volunteered when I was back in Hanson on a couple committees with economic development, capital improvements before I had to leave and when I moved to Pembroke. And I ran, was the Republican nominee in 22, came up a little short against our former state representative, but when the seat became open this year, was happy to jump back in, and we got across the finish line this time. So very excited to get started.
How does it feel to represent those 5 different communities that I mentioned? What has it been like getting acclimated to your district? Yeah,
well, it's an honor to represent your hometown. I think anybody who does so can agree. So that's really important to me, that my hometown and where I grew up is in my district. I love that. My folks still live in Hanson too, so it's great to be around. As far as our district, it's a pretty unique district where, a lot of, if you look at the map, a lot of the districts near the coast kind of go north-south. So the coastal communities are together and the inland communities are together. But I have one of the rare sort of east-west districts. So Hanson and Halifax have very different needs than Duxbury and Marshfield and everything. And it's a very interesting combination of towns, one that I love. Obviously, like I said, growing up in Hanson, a more inland community, very different economically, socioeconomically, educational needs. Everything is very different than the coastal communities. So when I first started running back in 21, it was a big learning curve to understand, I know the statewide issues, I know the local issues in Hanson. That's going to translate, and it didn't. I didn't know anything about shellfishing or, offshore wind or anything like that that's affecting these communities. I mean, the whole tech issue. There's seawalls. I mean, there's so much that obviously affects the coastal communities versus our inland communities. So it's a diverse array of needs. One that over the last 3 years I've gotten as up to speed as possible, and I'm learning every day. But being out in the community, which was a big part, as most people know, of my campaign at all times, really pounding on those doors and getting out, going to everything I can. So we picked it up quick, and I was very happy that, the issues that I focused on really resonated with everybody.
What has the transition been like from you get elected in November of 24 to getting ready to take office and then getting acclimated to the State House? Because right now, you're probably in a bullpen with 18 other state representatives and their aides. What has that been like for you?
Yeah, it's an interesting process. There's so much going on during the campaign, and then, of course, election night, and you win, and you feel amazing, and you want to get to work right away because there's so much high energy. And I was sitting around for 2 months. It's kind of this funny lame duck period. There was a lot, unfortunately, still going on at the State House, through the end of the informal session. But, I was just kind of making my rounds, making sure I got connected with all the department heads in our towns, the town managers and administrators, and talking to select board members and everything, doing some of the background stuff that I didn't get to during the campaign just to make sure I was as prepared as possible. And then January 1st rolls around and you get sworn in, which was great. I was able to have my family up there, which was a really, really fun time. And anybody who hasn't been to the State House, it's a gorgeous building, and everybody's formally invited, by the way. Anytime, you as well, Kevin. Happy to have you up. But yeah, so the last 3 weeks has been pretty chaotic in a good way, I would say. So for those that don't know, we actually file all of our bills for the 2-year session in the first 2 weeks. So
crazy.
The bill filing deadline was January 17th. I was sworn in on the 1st. So 16 days to file all my bills. And as a freshman, that's pretty difficult. There's really not a good, like a user manual for the office that you hold up there. So you kind of got to figure it out. You lean on the veteran reps, which, we're fortunate in our caucus on the Republican side that, some of the perks probably of having a smaller caucus is, we know each other all pretty well. Everybody's willing to help. So that's been a great benefit. I've been very lucky. And that goes for people also in Plymouth County that are on either side of the aisle. All the reps have been great, including the freshmen, the veteran reps, regardless of party. It's been good to get acclimated up there. But for anyone that has or hasn't seen, we've been busy. So I haven't double-checked, but I think I may have filed more bills than any other freshman. So we've been busy. We're at about 26 right now, which is a good chunk. So we've been busy.
We'll talk about some of your legislation. We'll also talk about the governor doing her State of the Commonwealth. But I think you're kind of fortunate where I know, again, it's a Democrat-dominated House. But you're fortunate where your neighboring communities, you have a Republican and a Dave DeCoste or an Allison Sullivan, Almeida. What's it like to be able to kind of have those veterans of the House to be there, and probably some of the folks on the South Shore, again, parties aside, that you're able to be involved with some of the other state reps or state senators who reside here on the South Shore? Yeah,
Rep DeCoste and Rep Sullivan Almeida have been so helpful, getting me up to speed and making it possible that I was able to file consequential legislation that I promised during the campaign. They've been super helpful. And like I said, regardless of party, there's some stuff that's just apolitical. The Globe or us are going to talk a lot about more partisan issues, but a good deal of what happens up there is, checking up on school funding or renaming a bridge and stuff like that that's apolitical, but that has a lot of meaning to our local communities as well. So I'm finding some opportunities that we're going to be able to partner on some of that stuff, which has been really great. I co-filed multiple pieces of legislation with Democrats as well as Republicans, so and happy to go. But a lot of that stuff was, things that are clearly just going to help our communities. So happy to find partnerships wherever.
And you have already there are already a couple of pieces of legislation. There are a couple of issues that are really important, especially your district. The MBTA Communities Act, which is there are several communities that have said no. Yeah. And we know that there is a problem because if you are one of those communities that voted it down, financially, fiscally, it could harm whether it's the town or maybe a department. And courtesy of you, I've learned as of late that if in fact your town voted down the MBTA Communities Act, if you're somebody, the fire service, the police departments, public safety is essential, but they can be harmed when it comes to some of these grants. Is that true?
Yeah, 100%. The administration, unfortunately, is just digging their heels in, and nobody can really make sense of it. To me, it doesn't make any sense. And to your point, so just to lay it out for people that haven't seen, I filed 3 bills related to MBTA zoning communities. One was an outright repeal. I think that would be the desired outcome if we could. Obviously, I understand that that's going to be the largest of the uphill battles, but a total repeal is what I think is the direction we should go in. But the second piece is more framing the guidelines. So all of these guidelines are coming beyond the statute. They're coming from the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. That is really, in my opinion, kind of stretching beyond really what the scope of the executive office is for. They're starting to mess with appropriations a lot. Yeah. So in that second bill, what I do is I move any compliance guidelines out until 2028. I think that gives enough time for all of the pending court cases to continue and to resolve themselves, as well as make towns that are coming in good faith, that want to comply or want to have a full-length discussion about this during town meetings or multiple town meetings. It gives them the opportunity to do so and make sure everyone's on the same page. So first is push out any compliance guidelines to 2028. The other piece is to reel in the punishments, if you will, back to the original 4 grants that were in the statute in 2021. To reel them back in. Right now they're up to like 13 or 14 grants, and unfortunately now what HLC is saying is that all discretionary funds, any grant, police, fire, libraries, potentially schools, anything, people have been rumbling about school funding, all funds could be reliant on your compliance, and that's just not right. There's no reason for this.
And knowing that, again, of the 351 communities that make up the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, 177 of them are affected by this, because whether you are a community that has a commuter rail or you're in a budding community, those are the ones that are affected. So why is it the remaining communities are not going to be penalized for it?
Right.
It's just not right. It's not
100%.
fair.
And there's been some other reps that have offered legislation to address that as well, because it doesn't make sense. And those are all Western or Cape communities that actually have more physical space, and their infrastructure is not as strained as ours. So it makes no sense there. So that was bill number 2 about the guidelines. And then number 3 is just to exempt what are known as adjacent communities. So even though this is called MBTA, community zoning, and the intent originally under the Baker administration was to put higher, denser housing near transit stops so that they could use the transit, they could walk, keep cars off the road, get into the city. This is completely morphed into something of its own and has nothing to do with Marshfield, for example. Their zone was over 5 miles away from the closest station. That makes no sense. It makes no sense. So the third bill is just to outright exempt adjacent communities from this, which has gotten a lot of bipartisan support. Actually, all 3 bills now have co-sponsors from both parties. So
Let's talk. Are there any other bills that you have filed or something that you have co-sponsored that you might want to kind of discuss for a moment?
Yeah. There's so like I said, there's 26. So there's a whole handful. I also offered a couple repeals of parts of the gun bill, Chapter 135. That will actually be on the ballot in 2026. I can't say there's a big political will from the majority to repeal parts of 135. But I thought it was an important discussion because filing the bill, it gets a public hearing. There's a lot of great work being done by Toby Leary down at Cape Cod Gun Works and a lot of other advocates with the Civil Rights Coalition that they formed to get those signatures. They got 100,000 signatures, more than double of what they needed. It was very impressive, and the governor responded by signing an emergency declaration, putting the law directly to enact the law immediately when it should have been suspended until, the state police doesn't even know how to enforce the training requirements. It's another situation where it's completely out of control. And so I think the conversation is warranted. That's been a big one, the firearm legislation. I did pick up a couple bills from former Rep. Cutler as well. We had a conversation about some of the ones that made a lot of sense. One is helping out students that are in 4-H programs. They actually get penalized for going to competition during school days. I didn't know if anybody really, a weird issue. So we're trying to give them some relief because 4-H is such a great program. We want to, support students that are doing so. That's one example. Creating local options for towns to expand the property tax write-off exemptions for seniors. So right now the cap for local taxes is $500. We're looking to raise it potentially to $2,000. Again, a local option, but it gives cities and towns some choice there. So that's a small collection. One of the other large ones, and I actually just spoke on Channel 7 last night about, was one immigration bill that I was able to sign on to. The caucus has been the Republicans have been very focused on this issue. So I really took a bigger focus on MBTA zoning because that's more district relevant, but I wanted to make sure, so I've signed on to a couple bills, but one that I'm actually the co-sponsor on is something about those ICE detainers, the immigration detainers that the federal government issues on a criminal suspect that's already in a jail, whether it's county or Department of Corrections, and just allows them to hold them so that ICE can get there to pick them up. So we decided to sign on to that one. I thought that was important. That's one that's about public safety, really. This is someone who's known to be a criminal, who's either going to be released back into the community that could harm other people and reoffend, but also ICE is still going to go and detain these people. But now, rather than doing a safe, controlled swap in a jail, they have to go into the community and do so. And there's been so much conversation lately around these protected zones, and that's a moot point. If we can just take the people that are creating crime and hurting innocent people, immigrant or citizen, in their communities, and make sure that we just safely get them over to ICE control rather than having, federal agents running through our communities. It's unneeded. So that was another big one that we had co-filed as well. So we're busy across a couple different areas, but happy to get working on these.
I think the caucus, it seemed as though it was effective. I know that there was a press conference with many of the Republicans in regards to issues with the migrants who are here, and calling on the governor to take action in regards to, and it seems as though it was something that she actually immediately made changes to. Thoughts on not only being a part of a caucus like that,
Yep.
but then action being taken almost immediately by the governor.
Yeah, I mean, a couple thoughts there is, one, some of these solutions were offered by Republicans over a year ago. I mean, I talked about this at length whenever asked by anybody during the campaign, oh, well, what are Republicans going to do about it? I mean, what can the state do about it? And we've been offering solutions, whether they've been residency requirements, whether they've been honoring detainers, whether, a whole host of things. So, I'm very happy that the administration and the governor is open to having this conversation. I think it might be a little too little too late. But, better late than never, I suppose. So I'm happy the governor's looking at it. I actually just saw that Representative Aaron Miklowitz of Boston, who's House Ways and Means chair, just sent a 3-page letter requesting briefings and information from the governor as well. So this is quickly becoming bipartisan, trying to hold the executive branch accountable here. Because in Ways and Means, I think, honestly, getting a supplemental of almost $500 million for more assistance to the shelter crisis, it's not going to fly through like it previously has. There's a lot of question marks. I've heard that there's a lot of dissent over on the Senate side, and I'd be curious to see. I mean, I think House Ways and Means asking for it is a clear indication that everybody just wants transparency.
Yeah.
Everybody wants transparency. That's not what we've gotten. Saying that there's background checks happening and then having people getting arrested with guns and drugs and finding out that they have no idea who's coming in and out.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's guests or visitors, people that are in the system or not in the system. There's a lack of transparency, and I applaud anything that the administration, the governor, the majority, anybody wants to do to get to work on this. We've been offering the solutions. If they want to take them now, that's great.
You're like right in there. And I mean, it's got to be proud to have filed 26 bills.
Very.
Did you ever get a count on how many bills have been filed this session, or are they still tabulating that?
Yeah, so I think all the numbers have been assigned, and all this stuff is also publicly available on the Mass Legislature website. So I definitely recommend anybody who wants to go and see, what are the 26 of mine, or what your reps' bills are, please go to malegislature.com and you can find them all on there. There's been somewhere around 4,500 bills.
Oh.
Yeah, on the House side.
Oh, okay.
Just on the House side.
We haven't talked about the Senate
yet.
yet.
Yeah, no, the Senate. Okay. So it's, I think people said it's usually somewhere in the 6,000 to 7,000 range. So probably over 7, actually, if we're at 4,500 on the House side. So, yeah.
You had a chance to be in attendance with the Sacred Cod and, of course, the State of the Commonwealth with Governor Healy. Yep. Give me your thoughts, your impressions on hearing her speak on what has taken place, achievements, looking forward, you as a state representative, and how you feel that's going to set the course for the next 2 years.
Yeah, I think everyone was a little curious, obviously, as 2026 barrels down on us, what the governor was going to say as well. I just don't think I heard a whole lot. I think people were had mixed reactions leaving there. She brushed over MBTA zoning. She mentioned it, and I was squirming, but she really didn't say much. She kind of brushed over the shelter and immigration situations we're dealing with. She spent, I think, more time just announcing the guests that were there than she did talking about policy. So, it was, there wasn't a whole lot offered up there, I think, about the future. And it was that night, it was right around the same day when we found out that these fire grants were being pulled from us. Oh. And the president of PFFM, the Professional Firefighters National President, was there. Ed Kelly was in the room the same day that she was pulling fire grants away from our local department. So there wasn't a whole lot for me there, I think, at the State of the Commonwealth. It was great in attendance. A joint session is always special. Yep. And, a lot of my colleagues were there, but I can't say I stood up a whole lot during the speech.
She just, and I would say maybe a day or two ago, I believe that I saw in the news that she's already put forth her budget, $62 billion. It's $6-7 billion more than last fiscal year, the current fiscal year. Give me your thoughts on. This is something, the House is going to be putting their budget.
Yep.
You guys are going to be debating and discussing, and give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm already hesitant. Like I said, the first vote I'm going to take as a state rep formally is going to be on this supplemental, most likely, if it makes it to the floor. And I'm not going to give her the $450 million she's asking for. This raise makes no sense to me. So at the time of when we're taping this right now, the budget's been out for about 12 or 24 hours. It just got released yesterday, so I haven't combed through it. But just the overall number, the staff is doing that now. But the overall number is, I can't wrap my head around it. The fact that the budget, it went up something like 7 or 8%, it makes no sense. I think the last budget was right around 58, 59.
Okay.
So it's like a 7-8% increase. I don't know where that money's coming from. We had one good revenue month back in December. Besides that, revenues are not doing well at all. People are fleeing the state. They keep using the so-called millionaires tax, as a catch-all for everything. They're like, oh, well, we have revenue. The millionaires tax is doing better than expected. But we can't pay for literally everything with that. Funding for our schools is not where it needs to be. We have the shelter crisis. We have pet projects. And, some of these programs do a lot of good for people, like, phone calls in prisons or free community college. But they're massive expenses. And they've way, way gone beyond what they expected, because if something's free, it's going to get used a lot more. So they were only accounting for the usage that was happening when it wasn't free. Right. And both programs, I believe, are double the budget that they expected. So, these are things that just don't make sense. We can't keep adding and adding. And during the State of the Commonwealth, I'd say one of the things that I was most pleased to hear was the governor was talking about removing red tape and making sure that bureaucracy was working better. And I was happy to applaud for that. I'm a big fan of that, but I don't understand how $3 or $4 extra billion of growing the state government right now makes any sense. If you're constantly asking for supplementals, and then we just got hit with the news that we have to repay the federal government $2.1 billion for inappropriate use of COVID funds for unemployment assistance. So the state a few years ago was in an amazing financial position pre-COVID and when they were getting funding from the feds. And somehow in just 2 years, we've completely turned that around for the worse. And I think people have to get serious that we cannot fund every single pet project or program. It's just not possible. When we're doing well, I'm all for helping, and I'm all for running these programs that are going to lift people up and help the Commonwealth. We're still a leader in a lot of ways. We have some of the best education, and although we have some unfortunate out-migration right now, it's a desirable place for a lot of reasons. But if we don't get serious, and some of this in the bill is they think they're going to pay for it by taxing kids' candy. They're literally expanding local option taxes again.
Sugar tax?
What's that?
Sugar tax?
Yeah, they're adding the whatever meals tax or sales tax to candy. Candy's losing its exemption.
Why do I think Deval Patrick wanted to do that once? I want to say that a previous administration talked about it, and it didn't go over well. Yeah,
well, I don't think this is going to go over well. I don't think a tax on candy is going to pay for an extra $4 billion on new expenses. It just doesn't make sense to me. So I'm excited for the budget process. Honestly, I'm hopeful that people are going to be realistic about where the Commonwealth stands. I know we're going to take a really good hard look as a caucus and as an office and make sure that we're only putting through what the state needs.
When does the time come where you're either able to formally put in for committees or you're picked for committees?
Yep.
Has that time come, or is that coming?
Yeah, so assignments should be coming soon. I've, made my requests, if you will, clear. There's a few different things that really matter to the district and matter to me. So I don't want to say too much as far. I know in our previous conversations I've mentioned, I'd love to serve on public safety, my background in law enforcement, and we have some great agencies down here. I have really good relationships with the agencies and the chiefs down here. Natural resources, being on the coast. We have small business to, as my family's been there, economic development, affecting business, and the committee I served on in town in Hanson. So there's a handful of committees that I have my eye on that I'm hopeful that, I've requested, if you will. But assignments should be coming soon. I'm hopeful that I'll get on a couple that are really going to help out the district as well. But yeah, we should be hearing that soon. So.
What has it been like getting in and around the district and getting things go, whether it's office hours for constituent services? What has that been like for you?
Yeah, no, everyone's been great. All the departments across the towns, from, again, town managers to council on aging directors and libraries, everyone's been super helpful. I've gotten a lot of invitations. Just last weekend, I was taking a tour with the new director of the public library in Pembroke. I was taking a tour of a farm that's part of a public-private partnership over in Duxbury. It's all sorts of things. All the time, and it's been great. So office hours are coming. We should actually have an announcement, I think, today or tomorrow about that.
Great.
So we're setting those up and confirming. So the goal is to be at either the senior centers or the libraries in every town once a month at least to start. So those will be announced soon, but very excited to have that. My goal here is to be accessible to people in the district, right? I said it a lot during the campaign, but I really believe that the onus is on the government and your elected officials to come to you and not the other way around. We all already have big transparency problems. We're just far enough away that it's troublesome for a lot of people to try to get to Boston. So we're not going to be hiding out in an office at the State House. We're going to be around the district just like we were during the campaign, and we're going to keep meeting people where they're at.
You had mentioned earlier about the state having to pay back federal funds. As a state representative, as an elected official, you have any concerns as to, we got a new administration going in down in our nation's capital, and knowing that there could be somewhat of an adversarial relationship, especially when it comes to the migrant situation? Does that concern you as an elected leader?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that have said that we should be concerned. I'm going to give the opportunity for both our governor's office and the administration in D.C. to get settled and get working here. Excuse me. The governor is already, to her credit, I think the tone has been a little bit different than when she was Attorney General. It's been a little bit less adversarial. She's made some comments, on the news and released statements about being open to partnership, and I think that's been great. I think that's the way that we should take. I have no problem with the state defending states' rights. That's a very important dynamic, and no matter who the president is, I don't want the federal government coming down and punishing states. I don't think that's right. But at the same time, we need to follow the law here in Massachusetts. So I definitely don't support local leaders or state leaders obstructing federal law. That's not right. We decided that nullification is not an appropriate process a long time ago. So we got to follow the law. The election was decided, and it was overwhelming, and we need to be a partner. So am I concerned? Well, I think that's yet to be determined. I don't want there to be an adversarial relationship. The same way that, under the last administration, under the Biden administration, I would have loved to partner with anybody in the federal government as well. And I hope that, our U.S. rep and U.S. senators will partner with us as well. So, that's yet to be seen, I think. But I'm looking forward to it. I think that all the elections went pretty well. And, I think it'll yet to be seen.
Okay. Last bit of business, and that is if folks want to find out more, if they want to reach out to you.
Yep.
It's our time when we say goodbye, but how can they find out more, or if they wanted to reach out to you for constituent services?
Yep, absolutely. So we've been assigned, so we do have a temporary office that you alluded to, so we'll be getting...
The bullpen.
Yes, so the bullpen's just a large conference room where they put all the freshman legislators together with their aides. So there's 38 people that are sharing these two conference rooms in the basement of the State House. It's a very funny setup. So we are there a couple days a week, so if you're up in Boston, you can find us there. When we get permanent phone numbers, permanent office space, we'll be sure to disseminate that information. Official State House right now, email is the best way to contact us, which mine is just ken.sweezey@mahouse.gov. And I also have a legislative aide. I have one staffer. That is just noah.laren, noah.laren@mahouse.gov. So you can reach out to either of us. We'll help you with constituent services. We will very shortly be getting a constituent webpage up. So different. We had a campaign webpage, but that's not the best or appropriate place for constituent services. So we're going to start a new website that should be up soon. We'll also announce that. That's going to have bill tracking, make it easier for people to track all the legislation that we're proposing, as well as have an easy form for constituent services so that we can get right back to you. So there's already people that have been reaching out, and we've been able to help, which has been great. So that's a big part of the job. So please reach us there. We have plenty of information as well on social media. We post everything on Facebook all the time. So please find me, State Representative Ken Sweezey, on Facebook as well.
Well, I would love to have you back in quarterly.
Yeah, great.
Maybe we have you back in April or May, just before the conversation starts with the conference committees come together. Actually, it's not until July, but love to have you in quarterly just to kind of update folks, and you can kind of speak to them and provide your own special transparency.
Absolutely, I'd love that.
Excellent. All right.
Great.
We want to thank you for tuning in to CrossTalk, 6th Plymouth District. Until our next conversation, have yourself a great day.